Hello, and a big welcome to all of you out there who are seeing this and listening. And today we have a very special guest. It's Adrey Sears. A big welcome to you.
Thank you. Thank you for
It's,
having me.
it's so nice to see you, and you have a lot of things to talk about, I'm sure. Please tell us a little about yourself, what you're doing, and
Yeah,
so on.
sure. So my name is Adrey Sears. I'm currently a judge instructor and clinician, or JIC, for the American Sidesaddle Association. I also have certifications with the Certified Horseman's Association, both in English and Western styles riding. I have a background in Daniel Stewart, who's the Paralympic sports psychologist for the equestrian team in the United States here. I have a certification with him. I have a background in natural horsemanship with the Parrellis, and I'm a graduate pony clubber. So I've kind of traveled the gamut. I grew up with horses. I started when I was 9. And I guess it was about 5 years ago, I fell in love with side saddle riding. So that's where I'm currently at right now. A lot of the things that we have to deal with side saddle riding is we deal with a lot of antiques. And it's very hard here in the US to find somebody who can work on tack and saddles, bridles, whatever. And so I have been slowly moving in that direction. I work on restoring side saddles. I've worked on regular stride saddles. I've been doing a little bit with harness work right now. So I'm down here in my workshop, but but that's kind of where we're at now.
Yeah, it's looking nice. And as I said, I am former saddle maker, and the first thing I saw was your saddle there, and I have also restored a couple of them in Sweden where I lived before.
Yeah,
It's ve yeah.
side saddles are a very interesting saddle in general. The tree is built a little more broader and a little longer than most trees. And the fit that it has to fit to their horse is so impeccable. I like to say 80% of side saddle riding is actually saddle fit, and 20% is just pretty clothes and having fun. So it's a very much a lot of saddle fit and things. I personally, I wish side saddle would come back more in the mainstream focus, because side saddle, it focuses so much on saddle fit that it's better for our horses. I personally have 9 horses, and one of my horses that I have he's my ex reining and working cow horse, gelding, and his name is Slug. Sluggo, he has a club foot and a tight shoulder. And when you ride him in regular Western tack, he can't stretch out that shoulder and use his body the way he's supposed to. He did not do all that great in the show ring. His true calling is teaching beginner lessons, and he absolutely loves that. And I won't take that away from him at all. But in the show ring, it really did hold us back, his conformation wise. And when I first put a side saddle on him, it was day and night. The side saddle I had was very much fitted to him. Since then, I've done a lot of work to help make it fit him better. And when that happened, he really just opened up. He was a completely different horse. Spins that we weren't able to get before, we were getting. He even offered to jump for me. This horse has never done anything more than maybe a cavaletti, and he'll now do 2 foot, but only side saddle. He will not
Oh,
do it in a regular stride. So he's very a side saddle was night and day for him, and I absolutely loved it. He went from my 15-year-old, I guess I might have to retire you kind of horse, to he's 18 and going strong now.
wow.
So yeah, he was an amazing difference with side saddle. So another cool thing that I like about side saddle is it really opens up opportunities for us as riders. Anything you can do astride, you can do aside. The United States Equestrian Federation recognizes side saddle in every discipline except for roping. So both
Okay.
English and Western, you can use it. It is recognized by the Federation of or FEI. So it can be done internationally as well. In fact, I believe it was Germany in our last Olympics had a side saddle rider. So that it's very prevalent, but it opens up
I
a lot of
didn't know
opportunities.
that.
Yeah,
Huh?
I think it was in the Paralympics, and she competed in dressage. I think it was Germany. It might have been the Netherlands.
Okay.
I
Yeah.
think it was Germany because she didn't have an orange coat. So, um, but it really opens up opportunities as riders because side saddle really hit its stream here in the United States in about 1860, right around our Civil War. And when that happened during the Civil War, we had a lot of amputees and war veterans come back from the Civil War. And obviously, back then, it was definitely a time in our nation that we were still moving west. We were still, a head of household or a man of household would still be doing hunts, would still be checking on their own crops and so on. So they still had to get out and ride. And if you were an amputee, it was hard for you to harness your own horse. It was hard for you to get in and out of a cart. And it was easier to ride. But if you were missing a leg, you can't exactly get on and swing over and expect to be there. So a lot of Civil War veterans would actually steal their wives' side saddles and get on and be able to go ride. That's one of the interesting things about working on side saddles is I have a couple of friends that also do some restoration in side saddles, and they've taken them down to the tree, and it'll be written Captain William or something on side the tree. It'll be written that it was made for a gentleman at the
Yeah.
time. So side saddles play a very huge role in our American history, and not a lot of people know about it. Not only did it start there with the Civil War veterans, but they also paved us out west. They used them to unravel telegraph lines and telephone lines, so it helped make modern communication a thing. They also served a large portion about women's rights here in the U.S. So they've paved a lot of our history here, and not a lot of people know it. And another interesting thing that I like about the paving of history is they paved the history for us as women in equestrianism, period. And it paved a lot of women's fashion all over the world. They let us start wearing pants.
Yeah.
So if you're wearing jeans right now, you can think of side saddle. They also let women become more independent, and their history in normal riding is amazing. There's a lot of things that us as equestrians that we take for granted, or we've always been questioned or asked as us as equestrians, and no one's ever had a straight answer. So if you're an English rider, there's kind of a thing going around online right now about if you're a 1, 2, or 3. So your billets, do you use billet 1, 2, or 3? So what billet do you use when you ride English? All right, those billets come from a side saddle and how a side saddle fits. If you use the first billet, you're actually pulling the front of the saddle down and backwards to hold it onto your horse's shoulder better. So if you have a saddle that likes to tip forward or scoot forward, use the first 2 billets. If you have a saddle that likes to pop up, use the first 2 billets. If you're using that third billet, that is pulling the back of the saddle down and forward. So by using 1 and 3, you're kind of using what we call a center fire rigging, where you're holding both the front and the back. If you're using 3 and 2, you're holding just the back down. So that might help a lot if you have a horse that needs to free in the shoulders. That will help take the pressure off the front. And if you're using 1 and 2, you're holding that front down, and you probably have a lot of wiggle room in your hindquarters there. That's for an English. But that came from side saddle fit. So that's something that us as equestrians, we don't even think about. Like, why do we use 1 and 2? Why do we use 1 and 3? And that came from side saddle. Another one in our Western world is bite to the right. Have you ever heard that term?
No.
Is bite to the right. So when you're holding your reins, that extra piece of rein falls to your right side. That's from side saddle. If it was hanging to your left, it'd get caught in your foot.
Ah, yeah.
So, so you hang it to the right, and thus it's become a tradition, and it's moved on and moved forward. Another good reason of why we always track to the left, I was always heard, oh, it was in the military because your sword is there.
Yeah.
Well, yes, but side saddle comes from a lot from the history, and why we always pass left shoulder to left shoulder is because you always pass a lady to the left because you never want to mess up their skirts.
Mhm.
So a lot of the things we do as equestrians can thank the side saddle, and it's I could talk for hours on it, honestly, but it just we owe so much as equestrians to it, and I just love the fact that it can help horses that we didn't even know needed help. Because, like I said, with Slug, I've known a lot of horses that have that same issue. They get in a side saddle, and a lot of people think, oh, they'll never be able to go aside. Well, actually, you'd be surprised. Almost 80% of horses that go side saddle do better in it. It's an amazing statistic, and I love it. There's lots of study. There are a few studies out there, but not enough to like quote or anything. And I'm just going off of my own personal experience. Another neat thing about side saddle, because it is so steeped in tradition, I know I've mentioned Slug, but now we're going to talk about my horse Bug.
Yeah.
It's very difficult. Bug is a 4-year-old Morgan Hackney cross that I have, and I'm currently teaching him to drive. And I had a couple this last weekend. I did a couple of demos at Western New York Equifest, and I had a lot of people ask me, "Well, are you going to ride side saddle with Bug?" And I said, not yet. And they said, really? Why not? Somebody like you who rides side saddle all the time, I'm sure you're itching to get him on. Well, yes, I am itching to get Bug in a side saddle. And honestly, if I could fit him for a side saddle now, that would probably be better because I'll have to have a year or so to remake it for him. But typically with a side saddle horse, we talk about a well-seasoned horse. Your side saddle horse is going to be a horse that's about 7 or 8 years old or older, something that has finished growing, something that has not a lot of problems physically or mentally, something that's well trained. Side saddle has a big steeped tradition in fox hunting. And so when we say a seasoned horse, we also are talking about how many seasons a horse has had out in the hunt field. So a horse that's been, ridden at least a couple of times out in the hunt field. A horse has been there, done that. That's typically what you would put under side saddles. So Bug, he's not there yet. I'm driving with him right now. We have a competition coming up this summer and a clinic that I'll be doing with him. So it's been fun to learn about that. But he'll get there eventually. But let's get him some world use out there first.
I love to hear that because we have a lot of discussions also about starting too early with our horses. Our horses is very big and they are growing slow. As you said, they are not finished before 6 or 7 years.
Yep, agreed.
Mm.
Most draft horses take a while too. Ponies
Yeah.
and draft horses, they take almost 9 years.
Mm.
So I would really prefer to go nice and slow with Bug as far as that's concerned. I'm driving him now, but not under vehicle. So it's giving him the opportunities to go places, to see things, to get used to the equipment, but he has no strain or weight on any of his joints or muscles or anything. But by the time that he gets to that point, he'll know everything. As soon as I hitch a vehicle to him, he'll know when I say, whoa, that means stop. He'll know when I say, all right, Bug, come around. That means he knows he's going to be turning all the way around. And he'll know how to use his body, and he's going to be a much safer and saner horse, honestly.
Mm.
So, but it's one of the things I love about side saddle. On the flip side of that, that's for young horses. Let's talk about old horses. They've been there, done that. Their withers might be a little bit twisted from all of those years of getting on and off, on and off. They might have arthritis, bigger knees, and so on. Side saddle's easier for them because there's so much weight distribution and so much saddle fit that's required of them. It can give them a second life in their retirement. So the oldest horse in my barn that I have, her name is Nancy. We love her. She is 28 years old. She'll be 29 this year, and she is an ex-standard bred. She raced a couple of years, and then I guess she just didn't make the cut or anything, so she was sold to the Amish and became an Amish school horse. Now, when we typically think of school horse, we think of, okay, we go to the riding academy and they're going to teach us how to tack up. Well, Amish still use horse and buggy as their mode of transportation. So when I say Amish school horse, what I mean is that's what the kids would use to haul her to get to school every day. She was literally a school bus. So twice a day, 5 miles on the pavement every weekday, back and forth, probably church on Sundays. She never really got a day off ever in her entire life. And she spent 25 years doing that. So by the time I got her, she has giant knees. She has bad joints. She has hard time standing up and down. The lady who gave her to us literally said, she's got 3 feet in the grave and 1 foot on a banana peel. She was not in great shape. So we gave her a lot of time. We gave her a lot of food. We gave her a lot of love. And she loves my kids. I'm a mom of 6. And so you could tell by the look in her eyes, she wasn't ready to give up on life, but she was ready to have a life worth living. And like I said, we took her in, and she loves my kids to death. She loves when they come out and groom on her. She'll take them outside. Every time they come to the gate, she's always the first one to walk over from the pasture, no matter where she is, just to come and say hi to the kids. And once she got her weight back on, and once we got her on some joint medication and things to help her with all of that, she became my side saddle horse. So I'm not a very confident rider outside of the arena. I have to have my arena wall. So she's actually taught me a lot about being able to go out on the trail and just enjoying what we see out there, not having to worry about, oh my gosh, it's a rabbit. Oh my gosh, a butterfly. It's going to kill me. I'm a dressage rider at heart. And, she loves it. She's so used to tracking the same 5 miles all over. She loves to go and see the new things. She likes to go out. We do trail rides with her, and I ride her aside because her side saddle, which is an 1880s or so plantation side saddle, it fits her so beautifully that it doesn't hurt her back. It doesn't hurt her knees because I'm so well balanced in it. If she does trip or fall, I never get in her way, and she's able to pick herself up, and we're able to keep going. And so because of that, she's taught me a lot about confidence in riding out in the open. And I've given her the opportunity of that second life. And she's just amazing. At our club here with the Western New York Sidesaddle and Equestrian Heritage Club here, just love her to death. Everybody loves the next Nancy story. Everybody loves to come over and give her a treat when we do our parades and things. She's become a mascot and well known. But so
that's fantastic.
Older horses, yeah.
How is that? You are riding a lot in Sidesaddle. How is it?
Yeah.
I'm just thinking, if you sit like that all the time, don't you get a little bit, awkward?
A little bit sore or something?
Yeah.
Nope, I have never been sore riding side saddle.
Okay.
So when you ride aside, I like to describe it when somebody goes, how can you sit like that? Well, can you sit on a bench and turn sideways to talk to your friend? If you can do that, you can ride side saddle. So when you get on a side saddle, you will get on regularly like you would a stride. So you'll spread your legs all the way across over the horse, and you'll square your hips just like when you're riding regularly astride. Then you'll bring that other leg, your right leg, up and over the horse's neck and lay it gently on those horns up there. So your hips are still sitting square, A side saddle is also very flat. It's literally like a bench. There's not a lot of sweep or give or waist in the seat of it. So you're going to look at it and you're going to go, "Oh my gosh, is that even comfortable?" But that's for a purpose, because it wants you to keep your hips very square and very straight. And because you're not having to stretch those hips out, like all the way out, and create that spread, and then you're trying to point your toes forward and creating pressure on your knees, none of that is there in a side saddle. In fact, when I talked about me getting a lot more confidence, I'm a bad rider in the sense that I have the same problem as millions of us do, and that is I pinch with my knees and my heels go up when I get scared. When we get scared, we always physically want to kind of curl up in a huddle position. And as riders, when you have to try and stay long and lean and relaxed, even in times that plastic bag flies across and your horse goes, "Oh my God," it makes us really get nervous, right? Well, in side saddle, believe it or not, the more secure you get in a side saddle is by pinching with your knees and pointing your toes, because you're wrapping your body around those two horns, and those horns are part of the saddle's tree. So the more you pinch with your knees, the more secure your seat becomes. If you point your toes, you're actually lifting your leg into those horns and getting a better grip, or what we call a purchase. It's called a purchase. So when you go over a jump, your side saddle instructor is going to say, "Create a purchase," because that's what you're actually doing, is you're kissing your right heel to your left shin, and you're really pinching down and huddling down onto that saddle. So for me, like I said, I'm a ring rider. I have to have that rail. When I first went on a trail ride with Nancy, I went aside. Why? Because I knew I was going to get scared and I was going to hurt my knees. Because when I get scared and I pinch while regularly riding astride, that's what I do. And I've never been sore riding in a side saddle simply because of that. When I get nervous and I pinch with my knees or grip with my knees, I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing in a side saddle, and it makes me more secure, which makes me sit up and relax, because I go, "Oh, I can do this." There's no pain response in my mind. And because there's no pain response and there's no gripping down on a prey animal, which is what horses are, they're more relaxed. They're more willing to go and do something. And so they aren't going, "Oh my gosh, my predator, my personal predator went, ah, so why are we freaking out?" We create this bad situation with ourselves. And in a side saddle, it breaks that. You can still have a freak out moment, but there's enough disconnect that it doesn't transfer to your horse, and then we can immediately settle back down because we can feed off of our horses. And the other way around, if our horse decides to be a jerk that day and just start bouncing around and going, "Oh, I feel happy and free," all we have to do is create our purchase, and we can sit up there and go, "Yeah, he's a butt today, but I love him," and they don't feed off of us, so they immediately settle down. It's a very interesting relationship that it puts you in a side saddle. One of the fun things about sitting in a side saddle, though, is when you first sit in there, you're literally going to feel like a queen. Like, the first thing you're going to want to do is just drop your reins and be like, "Hello, thank you for being here today. I'm so glad you got to see me." And that puts us as riders in a better mindset, honestly. When we aren't thinking about what we're going to be doing, like, "Oh my gosh, we're going to have to work on circles again," or "Oh my gosh, should I leave the stove on at home?" We're not thinking about all of that. We get up there and literally the first thing we think about is, "Oh, I'm so beautiful today." It puts us in a better mindset. And that mindset feeds into our horses. And it's the same thing. Many horses enjoy being side saddled. If you have an old show horse that thinks that their time in the show ring was over, they love to be that center of attention again. You're going to get a completely different horse, a horse that you hadn't seen in years underneath you, because they're just going to be like, "Oh, I know I'm perfect," and it creates a better mindset around everything. I love it.
Yeah, it's fantastic. I think I will tell my students to get a side saddle, because I help people who are concerned for riding, so
Hmm.
that would be a great thing.
Yeah,
But
I also like to say, if you have problems with posture, sit in a side saddle. Because if you typically kind of hunch over or shorten your shoulders together, side saddle you almost physically can't. It's like sitting in a chair. Because of that flat bench, it really makes you open and drop your shoulders. So even when you get nervous and scared and you want to grip, in order to sit back upright, you have to relax and sit up. So it's also really good for people that have problems with their upper body posture, because if you have to sit up. You can't curl in it. There's horns in the way. It's a very unique piece of tack, honestly.
mm, but they don't make them anymore, do they?
Not really. They're
Oh,
very few and far between. I know of only two companies that still make them.
okay.
One is over in England. It's I'm gonna say his name wrong. Rob somebody. He makes side saddles still. And then there's another company here in the U.S. in Missouri, which is Crestridge Saddlery. And they still make side saddles. Crestridge only makes Western and English side saddles, and what they call a crossover, which is kind of for trail, competitive trail, and so on. And then I think it's Rob Jenkins in the UK, he makes just English side saddles, but he makes something called a pilch saddle, which is a side saddle, but without the saddle part. It's just the horns kind of on a surcingle. So it's good for horses that are shorter backed or for young children. So that's what he makes. Otherwise, we're dealing with antique. Usually a side saddle is an antique. So what we do to kind of get around that is side saddles like the one that's up here. She doesn't have any panels on her. So that's the underside of the saddle. So she's going to be fitted to a horse that will fit the tree width. And then what we do is we'll create new panels to go underneath it and repack those with wool. So traditionally, a lady who bought a side saddle would buy it to fit her horse and fit her. So side saddles you're not going to find a side saddle that's going to fit you exactly and fit your horse exactly, unless you're going to spend thousands of dollars to get a brand new one. So we always fit for our horse first, and then try and find the best fit for us as riders. That's the best we can do. It's easier to fit a rider than it is a horse, and that's why we do it that way. So with the side saddle, then what we'll do, or traditionally what they would do, is the panels would be empty, and the lady would take it to her local saddlery and have them fill it with wool, fit it to the horse so that way the wool was packed in the way it needed to be, and then she would hire a stud groom, which was a young boy, usually about the age of 13 or so, to ride in her saddle for a year on her horse. So that would be for like warming up or just taking out on treks, doing normal day-to-day activities with that horse, and get that horse's back and body to shape the wool underneath it. Then before fox hunting season, a lady would have that restuffed or reflocked. She'd put more flocking in it, so that compaction was then taken away. And every 6 months or so, if she's using it hard, like for instance, during fox hunting season, she would get it reflocked again. And so that's what we're dealing with our side saddles now, is reflocking. And that's one of the things that I do with my side saddles is we reflock, we shim, we shape. There's several ladies around here that use like foam rubber or thick pieces of felt or so on to lay inside the panels in order to create that shape, in order to fit it to our horses. If you sell a side saddle, you take your shims out so you can refit your next side saddle to your horse. And then the next lady who gets the saddle can do the shimming and the fitting and so on. So when I said, I'm going to back up just a bit, when I said we fit our horses first because they're most important, they're taking the weight, the brunt of it, if you will, and then we fit us. So there's actually a lot of things we can do as riders to fit ourselves to a side saddle. One of the things we do is what we do is called a queen. A queen is a padding that sits inside each of the horns that help our legs stay in the right position. So when you swing your right leg up and over, your leg or your femur, your thigh, should stay right over the horse's spine. So if you do that and your horn's still a couple inches away, you can pack that with usually sheepskin. I know a lady that uses a polo wrap. She just wraps a polo wrap around it. It gives it what she needs. I use sheepskin. My daughter uses a sock with a t-shirt stuffed in it, but then again, she's also 6, so the side saddle she's trying to sit in, she needs a lot of extra cushion there. So there's a lot of things you can do there. Another place that a rider would have to shim is under their left hip. So kind of like where the pants pocket is on your jeans. And usually that's what ladies will use is their pants pocket in their jeans. They'll put a piece of foam and put it right there inside their pocket. You can use again sheepskin. You can lay that on the seat. I just did a saddle for a lady that needed a seat redone in order to better fit for her. So what we actually did is we laid suede over the top of it so she had more grip, and underneath it we put some gel padding like what you would get on a bicycle seat, and we put that underneath the suede in order to give her the lift, and covered it with the suede so she got the grip that she needed. So that creates our bodies to have that even weight distribution, which in turn helps our horse. Like I said, it's easier to fix the lady than it is our horse, and the horse takes the brunt of everything. So your typical side saddle is going to weigh anywhere between about 20 pounds to 120 pounds. Kind of depends on what type of side saddle that you have. This one here is probably only about 20 pounds or so. But my Western side saddle, that one probably weighs about 100 maybe. So that's a lot of weight that you gotta kind of fix, right? But once
Really?
it's very, it doesn't bother the horse. You'll be amazed that the lift and the upright movement that you get out of a horse that you thought you'd never get that out of, and you throw a side saddle on them and it's there.
Amazing. Really. Yeah. And I think about you. You have 6 children and you have 9
Yes.
horses, and what are you doing in your spare time?
Exactly. Yeah, no, I have 6 kids. My oldest is 10, the youngest are twins, and they will be 4 next month. And then we have 9 horses. The youngest horse is a weanling. He's a 3/4 Percheron, 1/4 American National Show horse. And then so we've got a warm blood and a quarter horse, a couple of standard breds. My boys have a Shetland, and we have a miniature. I have a Hackney pony, and I have a Hackney Morgan cross. So we have a variety in the barn.
Yeah.
But that's the nice thing is the kids help out with the horses.
Mm.
So, like I said, my boys, they ride their Shetland, or they'll drive the Shetland, or they'll drive their sisters around with the Shetland. Sparky is amazing. He loves the kids, and he's very safe. And then they've got Jingle Bell, which is our miniature that the girls like to sit and groom on. Jessie, my oldest girl, she rides Cole or Hackney, and she likes to go to parades, and she rides him side saddle.
Mhm.
And then my husband rides a little bit. He's got the warm blood and our weanling draft horse because he wants to log and drive a little bit more. And I'm driving the Morgan Hackney right now. So, and the standard breds are here for retirement. One is off the track that she broke her coffin bone in a back leg, so she's just kind of a friend in the pasture kind of
Mm.
thing, and our other standard bred, which is Nancy, but again the kids ride her and so on. So when I'm out in the barn, I'm also babysitting, and that's kind of the nice thing about why I have a small little Morgan Hackney, but it's why I also like the side saddle, because when I get in the side saddle, I feel like I don't have to train my horse. It's that mentality of I'm up here, I look nice, I'm glad I was here today. Let's just walk down the driveway, and I don't get on and go, oh my gosh, what do I have to work on today? Oh, his shoulder's falling. His neck is falling. He's bending the wrong way. I got to fix this.
Mm.
I got to fix this. I don't feel that way in a side saddle. It's more of, oh, that was interesting that you trotted kind of funny. Why don't we fix that real quick and then leave it alone and keep going? So it's a nice mentality. Like I said, if I had spare time, with all of that, like I said, I work on side saddles. I'm slowly working on carts as well. I have a number of friends that send me their their old Meadowbrook show carts and so on. So I refinished them out in the barn as well. So my husband works full time, obviously. So he's gone during the day, but in the evenings he'll help me with more of the heavier lifting type stuff, like if I've got to retrue a wheel or something like that. So, but yeah, he's here. He's around.
Fantastic, fantastic. So your children is also riding in side saddles.
Yes. Yes,
That's
they do.
amazing.
My oldest daughter, she rides Sidesaddle. She goes to parades and trail rides. She rides Cole. Cole is about 22 or so. He's an older Hackney pony, but again, he's been there, done that. He's super safe. He's super
Mm.
sound. And she rides him Sidesaddle. My second oldest boy, Titus, he actually rides Sidesaddle as well. He
Mhm.
gets on in stud grooms for Jessie, so he'll warm up Cole for her if she needs it. There was one parade a year ago that Jessie was not feeling well. She was feeling very sick. And when we were there, we were like, well, maybe it'll pass when she drinks some water. And she wasn't feeling well. So Titus rode Cole's Sidesaddle in that parade for us because I was like, well, Cole's here already tacked up. So Jessie stayed back with Daddy and he rode Cole. He also works with, I said, our one standard bred with the broken foot. He works with her and does like showmanship patterns and halter training and stuff with her. So she still serves a purpose, even though she's just a pasture ornament here, basically. But she's sound enough that we can do things with her, and she really loves Titus. I mean, they take selfies together with the phone, and she steals things out of his pocket and so on. So they love each other. They have a very weird relationship, but whatever. Her name is Blush, Make Me Blush, and I think it's also cute. You have Titus and Make Me Blush. But so they do a lot of stuff together. Clayton, he rides and drives Sparky, who is the Shetland pony. He's about 18 or so in age. Gavin rides Nancy, my big standard bred mare that I ride. So yeah, they do a lot. My boys like to point out every opportunity that Sidesaddle is not just for ladies. There is such a thing as stud grooming, like I already talked about before about the Civil War. Many war
Mhm.
veterans ride Sidesaddle. It's very much a men's sport as well as a woman's sport. There is nothing anywhere in Sidesaddle history that says it is just for ladies.
No.
Nothing ever. It's also not recognized with in like USEF and so on. It does not specify gender for male or female to ride in it. It just specifies specifications on the saddle, whether it's an English saddle or Western saddle, in which event it can be used in. So it's very much a men's sport. A friend in the American Sidesaddle Association actually rides at Briarfest, one of the big events. If you've ever owned a Briar horse, you know what Briar is. And he rides in Briarfest Sidesaddle. He's an amazing Sidesaddle, very accomplished Sidesaddle rider. And he rides his Fjord ponies Sidesaddle. So he's, it can be a men's sport too.
Yeah, really, really.
Yeah.
How about the horse? Are they? Can you just change from the English saddle to side saddle, or you have to make the horse get used to it?
Typically, in my experience, no. You can just, I mean, one day you can ride them regularly astride, and the next day you can throw an English saddle on them. There really isn't that much difference, at least to a horse's feel. I personally, what I do in it is when I switch it over, I let them wear it first the first day. And if they're like, oh, okay, then the next day you can get on and do it. I did with Slug. Slug was my first horse that I rode Sidesaddle. I did a little bit of preparation with him, such as raising my leg up over his neck. So he didn't go, oh my gosh, mom's leg
Mhm.
is not where it's supposed to be. But otherwise, they really don't they really don't seem to mind. I've only ever known one horse that had an issue with a saddle, and it was a weight issue. And once we switched the weight of the saddle, he did just fine. And that was a horse going from he was a Western roping horse, to an English class. He did an English jumping class, and that horse, he couldn't think of nothing back behind him, all of that extra weight and things from his roping saddle. But we were able to put a longer saddle pad on him, and he took it just fine. So I would say it's the same thing with side saddles. Every horse that I have ever met that we've put a side saddle on has taken to it very easily. I think a lot of that has to deal with the fact that we're dealing with seasoned horses. We're dealing with horses that have been there, done that. We're dealing with horses that have been in the lesson program. We're dealing with horses that you have taken to a show and they've seen an accident, or you've accidentally done something to them and they're like, okay, whatever. So a lot of that has to deal with the fact that we're dealing with very seasoned and sane horses. The only thing that I really had trouble with my horse going from astride to side saddle was Slug was very leg cued. So when I asked him to canter, it was because my leg was behind the girth. Or if I asked him to give me a haunches in, it was because my leg was in front of the girth. Things like that. So what we ended up doing with that is I had to do a little bit of retraining with him when I went to show him side saddle in dressage. Is I ended up doing a lot of lessons of using just rein cues to ask for those things. So he started to learn to listen to my hands, listen to my seat a little bit more than just my leg. A lot of side saddle riders, how we get around that is they will carry a side saddle cane or a dressage whip, a hunt whip. You create an artificial aid to kind of fix that missing leg, if you will. But a lot of horses pick up on it very quickly. I mean, if you sit and think about how do you ask for a trot, you sit up, you sit back, you eyes forward, you shorten your reins, maybe one braid, you kind of lift your own weight and you say, all right, trot on, and then you give them a squeeze, right? You have these various steps. If you continue those same steps and get out of your head that you have to do it differently because you're in a side saddle, you'll never have to reach that last piece of using your foot because they're already listening so much from all of your other cues. And a horse can feel a fly land on them. They definitely can feel your head moving. I mean, your head weighs 10 pounds heavier than the rest of your body. So if you look left, they know you're looking left. And it's the same thing in a side saddle. There's no difference there. So if you ask for the trot every single time, you sit up, eyes forward, shorten your reins just a little bit, you give them a cluck and then give them a squeeze, you'll never have to get to a squeeze with a side saddle because they're just going to pick up on all of those other little details. Because they're going to be more willing to do it. I mean, if you have a horse that you have to ride with spurs or you have to ride with a whip, have you ever thought that the saddle fit may be the problem? If you're using those first two billets, you might be pinching their withers. It's hard for them to lift you up and the saddle up when their withers are pinched in order to get that movement, that opening that they need for their upper leg or their hind leg to get up behind them and be able to start a trot. You're sitting there thinking that they need extra encouragement when in reality they just need to feel like they can do it. And a side saddle, because of its fit, they're going to feel like they can do it. They don't need the extra encouragement because they already go, oh, yeah, I can do that. It's the same thing. The only difficult thing that I can say that I've had problems with, and that was simply because of muscle memory with Slug, was getting that right lead canter. Because he was so used to that shoulder being so blocked up, he still wouldn't quite give it to me side saddle. But once he figured out he can do it, it's almost like the problem has switched. I can't get his normal canter because he's like, oh, I can do a right lead now, And it's that freeing, that willingness. And like I said, it's that mental mindset. I mean, you get in the side saddle and you're like, hi, hello world, thank you for being here today. And you don't have those premonitions of, oh, it's going to suck today. This is going to be a horrible day. He didn't do circles yesterday. Like you don't have that bad mental talking in a side saddle. It's almost I've never had it, and mental depression and mental issues that I fight with on a daily basis. But when I get inside saddle, it's gone.
Mhm. Yeah, and I can imagine also, as you said, the horse is very sensitive, so they are released from that pressure we have in our legs when we are riding.
Hmm.
Yeah,
Yep. They feel like they can do it. And
yeah.
again, it's what I talked about earlier. It's that mental disconnect. I mean, we, we're now, if we get worried, we can calm ourselves down because they don't get worried because we have that disconnect with our legs being on one side.
Mm,
And it's definitely a rabbit hole to get down into. I got into side saddle, me personally, because I moved up here to New York. I'm originally from Oklahoma, which is way out west here in the US. And when I moved up here, I was always told in Pony Club, oh, if you ride on the East Coast, they're going to be so hoity-toity. You're going to be so many dressage divas. You're going to be with all of these, really tied up equestrians way out here. And here I show up with my little ex roping cow pony because that's who I had in college because my good English horse passed away the year I moved up here. So I'm like, I'm going to be showing up with this kind of nobody horse and nobody's going to believe me when I say I have all of these credentials. I have done all of this training. I've worked with Daniel Stewart with the equestrian Olympic team. I've done all of this, and here I show up with a horse that can barely like walk trot. Like I'm gonna look like an idiot. So
mm,
I told myself, okay, I'm gonna have a couple of goals for myself as an equestrian. I would like to do more fox hunting. That's something that was not available to me out west. There were no foxes. There was no hunt groups that wasn't a thing. And here I was, a pony clubber where everything is supposed to be about fox hunting, and I've done it once. That kind of thing. And so I was like, I'd like to try that. And I think I'd really like to learn more about side saddle. It's steeped in tradition. I see it on TV all the time. I think it might be fun. I've got a really sane, safe horse. I'll try it. Well, I tried to do fox hunting, and Slug is not going to happen. First off, his name is Slug, so he's probably slower than molasses in January. And he can't do jumping. He physically, with his shoulder, he couldn't do the jumping. So I was like, well, I'll try side saddle. So I got a hold of Maggie Herlinsky, or Herlinsky at the time. She's married now. And she was like, yeah, why don't you give Sidesaddle a try? And she pointed me in the direction of a clinic and a person who was selling a side saddle that was going to fit my horse really well. So I started making payments on my side saddle, and I met her at a clinic and I rode for the first time. And I think since that day in May, I've ridden astride maybe twice. I have done nothing but side saddle since. It is a rabbit hole. I've learned so much from my regular mental for myself and my regular equestrianism. I didn't even know. I just remember being one of those kids that always asked why. And my instructor was like, "Oh, because we've always done it that way."
mm,
Why do we use the first and third billet at my barn? Well, because we've always done it this way.
mm,
And with side saddle, every time I ask those questions, there's an answer. And
mhm,
every time we have one of those answers, I go, oh my gosh, I can use this in regular astride riding. It really is. It's just eye opening. It really is a rabbit hole, just learning. And there's so many different types. Like here, I always thought, we've heard of as equestrians when you ride in an English saddle that you have a jumping saddle and you have a dressage saddle and you have an AP saddle or an all-purpose saddle, right? There's those three. But in a side saddle world, if we're just dealing with English side saddles, we have a jumping side saddle, we have plantation side saddles, which are like dressage and cutaway and saddle seats and so on. We have pleasure English side saddles. We have plantation side saddles. I mean, it's endless, and that's not even to get into the Western side saddles like catalog saddles and Somersets and cow horns and Western pleasure, and like it's amazing the abilities. If you When you get into side saddle, the first question you have to ask yourself is, what am I going to do in side saddle? Because as soon as you can answer that, you're going to be face down a trail that can just blow your mind every single time. I'm still learning, and I'm 5 years into this, and I'm still learning. And every time I open a saddle, like if I got to change the billet, I'm still learning because each saddle is different. No two side saddles are the same. They were never mass produced like our regular English saddles can be. You know, you can pick up a catalog and say, "Oh yeah, I want a close contact, blah 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 in brown." Like,
Yeah.
and that could be, you know, it's done. Side saddles were made for the lady and the horse that ordered them. So if that lady had a taste in flowers, her side saddle may be tooled in flowers. And the same year from that same company, you can have a saddle right next to it. It's sister side saddle, and it's going to have no tooling or anything on it because the lady who ordered that one wanted it plain. So there's so much to learn from them.
Yeah, that's great. Make me curious.
There's some really
Yeah.
good books out there. Unfortunately, there's not a lot from books in this area or this era. I collaborated with a bunch of ladies from the American Sidesaddle Association, and the newest book on the market that you can buy is called Dress and Tack Guidelines from the American Sidesaddle Association, and I co-authored that book. But that's going to be your newest one on the market, and that is simply the new rules and regulations of side saddle in the United States Equestrian Federation. It's supposed to be a quick guide for if you show up to a show with your side saddle that you can point out to your judge saying, "Nope, it's legal. It's right here. You can look it up in your rule book. Here it is." And it's that's what it's meant for. The next good book that's out there is called Sidesaddle Legacy by Linda Bowlby and Marta Friddle. And that one has to deal with a lot of American history with the side saddle, but it goes into a lot of detail about saddle fit and types of side saddle. So that one's a really good one. My favorite book about side saddle that you can go out and find is it's called The Horsewoman by Alice Hayes, and it was written in 1912 or so. So it's pretty old. It's older than some of my side saddles.
Yeah.
But her information is so amazing, and I still find it relevant today. First off, she's funny. If you want to read her, she is hilarious. She makes the read worthwhile. She cracks jokes all the time. Secondly, her husband was a veterinarian for the British Army when they were out in India.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of her studies falls back on the work that her husband does. So when she talks about saddle fit, she backs it up with an actual veterinarian and talks about why we use this kind of girth instead of this one because it's better for the horse, this reason and why. So she does a lot of, in my opinion, kind of modern thinking when it comes to side saddle. She points big on safety and big on mental attitude. She was the lady who actually created what we call the safety skirt or the safety apron in our side saddle. So typically today, when you see a lady in the ring, you'll see them wearing an apron or a skirt, but what you don't know is that there's nothing in the back. And Alice Hayes was the lady that started that. She made it safer for women to ride side saddle. She had many friends get injured and killed because their skirts would get hung up.
Yeah.
And so she made it safer, and she wrote in there the pattern on how to do it. She's also an avid dog lover, so that book has a very large section in there on how you should treat your dog and how you should spoil your puppy without letting your husband know, and I love it. And how to spoil your horse but still train your horse and do it correctly without ever injuring your horse. She talks about never injure your horse's curiosity, never injure your horse's mental attitude. You should always thank your horse after you ride it because after all, they didn't have to bring you back alive.
Wow.
So she's a very forward thinker, at least in my opinion, for that time. And her book is still quite relevant. There are some things in there that are not relevant, like how you should have your hired hands help you to get on your horse or things like that. But a lot of her book, in my opinion, when it comes to the horses and the dogs or hounds in that case, are very relevant in these days. And she has a lot of information. It's a very big book. It's like 500 pages or something. It's a big book, but it's one of my favorites. I love it.
Yeah. I can imagine.
Yeah, another
Yeah.
good resource for finding out more information with Sidesaddle is you can look at the website, the American Sidesaddle Association.com. We have a lot of free information on there. There's links to various podcasts where myself or the president has been talking on. There's free printouts such as timelines and histories, blog articles on how to find a saddle to fit yourself or fit your horse. There's a link to our YouTube channel there that has a lot of information on how to fit your horse and but some fun videos too, like how to put glitter on your horse's feet, that sort of thing. Just when you feel like a princess, you might get your horse pretty too.
Yeah. Yeah. Is it expensive with a side saddle?
That is a great question, and I actually got that question a lot this weekend.
Mm.
Side saddles can range anywhere between $20 to $3,000. It kind of, again, you need to ask yourself, what am I doing with this side saddle? So, because we're dealing with antiques, a lot of people don't know what they have. You could find a side saddle on eBay for $20, just simply because they don't know what they have. They don't know what's there. However, when you're picking up that $20 side saddle, it may not be safe. The tree might be
No.
cracked. It may not have a leaping horn. The leather may be in horrible disrepair or whatever. But there are some dumpster dives that are quite a good saddle. The saddle behind me, for instance, it's only missing its panels. I spent $40 on this saddle. But again, I knew what I was looking for, and I know myself that I can fix this one up and make it rideable again. My first side saddle that I bought was $2,000. My nicest saddle that I have in my collection, because I have about 30 or so side saddles. My nicest saddle in the collection is probably worth about $3,000 to $3,100 or so, US dollars, simply because it's almost in mint condition, but it's almost a 200-year-old saddle. It just kind of depends. I have a lot of museum pieces, like Civil War age side saddles, so you're looking at 1860s kind of pieces, but they're not acceptable to ride in. The oldest saddle that I have that we ride in is my daughter's saddle, and it's actually an 1830s catalog saddle. But again, that tree has been reinforced. That saddle's been stripped all the way down. That tree is reinforced. It's got new leather on a lot of the panels and so on of it. And she never asks more than anything than a walk in that saddle. It's her parade saddle that she rides in. So it varies a lot. Side saddles are typically more expensive if you want them in able to jump. There's something called hunt bar in side saddles that it's basically an iron bar that runs the width of the tree that helps brace it. So when a horse jumps and lands, as you as the rider pinch further onto those horns, when you land, you don't knock those horns off. It's braced by a piece of metal in there. So you don't jump on anything that doesn't have a hunt bar, because you're going to come off on that. So it's another form of safety. So again, your best bet if you want to try one is, I always point a lot of beginners to the American Sidesaddle Association, to their tack room, because a lot of our nationwide members, they will, if they have an older saddle that they don't, the horse that they rode in, it doesn't fit anymore or something like that, they'll put it through consignment there. I do know that we do some international work too. We get side saddles from Australia. We've gotten a few from the UK as well. We also do a lot of help if you have an old side saddle sitting in your barn and you have no clue about it. You can send us an email with a picture of it, and we usually go through with some of our other JICs or judge instructor clinicians. They'll look at the pictures and they'll tell you if it's safe or not, or if it's worth getting redone or so on. Because some side saddles, like I have a bunch that are sitting over here that you can't see, but they're not worth getting redone, but they're worth it in knowledge to us. So they're saddles that my husband and I will strip down and we'll rebuild off of the original tree after we reinforce the tree. So these themselves, they're beyond a good cleaning and a couple of new billets, but they still have a lot to teach us. And any side saddle has a lot to teach us. Even if it's just to say, don't sit in this, side saddles have a lot to teach us.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Wow, time is running, and yeah, I learned a lot today, and that's great. Yeah, and maybe I will try it out someday. I have never tried to sit on it. I thought that you have to have a special balance and all that, but
No,
no, now I know better.
no, you just have to have the willingness to try.
Yeah, it's great. Yeah, something else you wanted to say before we end it here?
I don't think so, but I do appreciate you having me on, and I thank you so much for the opportunity to talk about a sport in our industry that I really enjoy and I really love. And like I said, I wish that a lot more people would think more of it than just a dilapidated or an antique or archaic old sport, because it's not. There's still a lot of relevance, and a lot of relevance in our modern day age, from no matter what kind of rider you are, from just a stay-at-home mom like myself who just wants to get out and have a reason to get out to the barn, or to be an Olympic rider, and everywhere in between. There's endless opportunities, and side saddles can get you there too, as long as you have the willingness to learn and you have a nice, well-seasoned horse.
Yeah, it's great. It's great. Thank you so much for being here today. It has been a pleasure. And as I said, I learned a lot, and I hope you also did, all of you out there who have been listening and seeing this. And please subscribe on this channel, because then we can have new people going on every Sunday. So thank you for so much for you to be here today. It was really a pleasure to have you.
Thank you.